You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates. You're watching the Inside Slant on The Sports Objective. Over the next hour, the guys will be joined by play-by-play voices, beat writers, and other analysts from around the nation as they preview this weekend's college football action. Let's hear from you throughout the show via Facebook Live, on our YouTube channel, or on Twitter at The Sports OBJ. Now, here are the guys.
It's Thursday night. That means it's the Inside Slant, a weekly college football preview, as we bring you lots of great guests across the nation, beat writers, coaches, would like to say players, but they're obviously getting ready for that. And tonight's going to be an action-packed night. We got a couple of our old friends coming back. They're not old, but they've been with us for much of our time. And with us right now from the Clemson SI, that would be none other than Will Vandervort. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me. Always fun to come on and talk football with you guys, man. It's always a blast.
No doubt. In fact, it's hard to believe that I was just thinking right before the show started, are we really like the season is going by so fast? We wait for it and wait for it and wait for it. Is it that way for Clemson fans down in your neck of the woods? We wait for it, and then the season feels like it's 2 or 3 games and not 12, or you guys have 14.
Well, yeah, sometimes when it gets to 14 and 15, it's and I've been fortunate that I went 6 straight years having that problem. It does seem a little long, and you're kind of worn down by mid-January when that national championship game comes. So I've been blessed. So I'm not complaining, Dave. So just don't understand. I'm not complaining because you love covering a program that puts you in those situations, and you get to write those kind of stories and cover that kind of team. But yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, time's flying. Yep. And I was talking with one of my buddies the other day about how we're already in week 7, and the South Carolina game, which is Clemson's biggest regular season game of the year. It's at the end of the year, the annual rivalry game. That's only a couple weeks away now, 5 weeks away. And as great as it is and how excited everybody in the state of South Carolina gets for that game, it also represents that it's the end of the regular season. So a lot of people get depressed too at the same time because they know college football season's wrapping up. I think the Tigers got a chance this game this week with Syracuse. I know we're going to talk about it. I think if they can win this game, they have a chance to have one of those special seasons, I think, where, like you just mentioned, where they're going into week 14 or 15 and maybe getting an opportunity to play for another national championship. So we'll see. But they gotta, as Dabo likes to say, you got to take it one game at a time, right?
Oh, yeah. I really see right now, and not to jinx you guys, but if I had to say, I would think you guys would be at least a 4 seed. But we'll see how that all plays out. And we were talking pre-show in the green room about the ACC football this year, and I know maybe I'm biased because I live in ACC country, even though we cover the American and obviously East Carolina, but we're very familiar with ACC and SEC. But it seems like to me that you guys in the ACC are very underrated, and it's like they kind of treat it like it's just Clemson and everybody else, when the reality is there's a lot of teams that people are not paying attention to. You could start talking about Wake Forest. You could start, even Duke has been a good story this year. You look at Wake Forest has been great again this year. You could Pitt. I mean, you could go on and on about how many great teams are in the ACC.
Yeah, you right now the 4 teams in the ACC Atlantic Division, Clemson, Wake Forest, Syracuse, and NC State are all ranked in the top 25. And then North Carolina over on the coastal side is ranked. That's 5 teams. I think the ACC is second behind the SEC in ranked opponents right now. We're talking week 7. And you got 5 teams still ranked in the polls and 4 teams from one division. The ACC Atlantic is the only division in all of college football to have 4 teams ranked in the current poll. The ACC Atlantic has more teams ranked than most conferences overall have teams ranked.
That's correct.
So you're correct on that. It's from a national perspective. If this is the SEC that had 4 teams ranked, and I'm not trying to talk about the SEC, I'm more talking about the way the national media always is in love with the SEC, and that's not the SEC's fault. It's not the Big Ten's fault, but that's just the way it is. They would just be like, it would be mentioned every second, right? I mean, it really would. And you don't get that. Like, for instance, when Clemson went 6 straight years, people probably don't know this, They went six, and this is why people don't know this. Clemson went 6 straight years to the college football playoff, right? Well, you know that part. But what nobody's told you is Clemson's the only team to do that in the college football playoff era. Alabama didn't do it. Alabama only went 5 years in a row, and then they didn't go, and then they went the last 2 years. So people don't mention that. Like, you never – but if that was Alabama that had that streak of 6 consecutive times, you know it would be mentioned. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like it is I think the respect factor of the Atlantic Coast Conference that everybody thinks of it as a basketball conference, and we understand that. But I think football has really come up in the last 10 years in this conference. Now, last year wasn't a great year for the conference, and that probably hurt some. But for the most part, when you look at the last decade or so, the ACC has represented itself well on the big stage in a lot of different areas. You know, Florida State and Clemson have played for the national title a few times. They got 3 national titles between them. Well, that's more than anybody else not named Alabama, right? Clemson's got the second most national championships of anybody else not named Alabama. And but all we hear about is the SEC and the Big Ten. And the Big Ten, you don't want to talk about overrated? The Big Ten, all we hear about is how great they are. They only got 2 teams that are really good. I mean, Penn State, let's be honest, they gave up 400 yards rushing last week. Do we really think Penn State is a top 10 team? No. They probably maybe top 25 at the end of the year, but you're only going to have 3 teams. The entire conference, as good as everybody says it is only going to have 3 teams ranked at the end of the year when it's all said and done. That's going to be Ohio State, Michigan, and maybe Penn State. I still don't know how good Penn State really is because they can't run the football and they can't stop the run when they play a true run team. So how good are they in the trenches, right? So and I hear it all the time. Like Ohio State, people like saying Ohio State, oh, they're the best team. Maybe they are, but you know what, Dave? I don't know if they are. You know why? Because they ain't played nobody. Right. They've played every game except one at home, and the one road game was to a horrible Michigan State team. So I know nothing about them. And their best win is against a Notre Dame team who just lost to Stanford and has lost to Marshall. You see my point? Like, how good is the Big Ten? You know, I think the SEC has kind of shown how good it is. I think the ACC has shown how good it is because they've gone on and won these games against other big, Power 5 conferences teams. The Big Ten, though, is a joke, in my opinion. And I hate hearing about how great the Big Ten is when the Big Ten champion, Ohio State, most years, they get run out of the building by Clemson or Alabama, you know what I'm saying, in the big game. So I'm tired of hearing about the Big Ten. The Big Ten is not that good. I don't know why everybody says it is.
Well, I wanted to mention, too, about the college football playoff, and then we're going to get to the big game. We're very excited about Clemson, Syracuse, one of the games I'm going to be watching this week. But let's talk about that because you were talking about with conference championships. I really like the fact that they're going to incorporate every single conference champion into the upgrade, and hopefully it'll be 2024. I've been waiting for this moment for the college football playoff expansion because guys like you that are Clemson, you're still going to be ranked way high. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt Clemson. And I think there's a case that could be made if hypothetically, if you have a team when the Coastal beat Clemson and Clemson has a remarkable year and loses that one game in the championship game, they should still be in the college football playoff. So I'm happy that they have the 6 top rated conferences and then 6 at large because a team like Clemson, like again, if they had one loss in the ACC championship, they shouldn't be punished and kicked out. But for people to say the conference championships don't matter, I think that's a disrespect to your program and Clemson because you guys have won so many. So all those conference championships don't matter. I think they do matter, and I think
they do.
The conference championship games are great for not only programming for fans. Look at the city of Charlotte. I could go on and on about why conference champion. I didn't want to get off on that tangent, but I hear that all the time, and it drives me crazy in the national media. How it's not a big deal for a conference championship. I was like, well, when you have those teams like Clemson and they win the conference championship, they should have their ticket to the college football playoff. End of story. Yeah,
no, you're right. And when they expand it, like you said, that's probably going to be part of the deal, or at least they're going to try to make it part of the deal. I think the College Football Playoff Committee has said over and over again that data point, in other words, playing that extra game, means something, and they really weigh that in when 2 teams are maybe you say equal, and
Right.
if it comes down to one played and won a conference championship, the other one didn't, then they're going to get that data point. It's going to help them get over the top. And so, yeah, at Clemson, and I can't speak for all the other schools or whatever, but I can only speak for at Clemson and what Dabo does with his program. And I think Dabo handles the championships in what it means, the ACC championship means to Clemson and the program, as good as anybody around the country. Because when you hear Dabo talk, you'll never hear Dabo Sweeney say, our goal is to win a national championship. That will never come out of his mouth, because that's not his goal. His goals are pretty set in stone, and they're all over the football facility there. The number one goal is to win the first game. The number two goal is to win the division. The number three goal is to win the state championship against South Carolina. The number four goal is to win the ACC championship. And the number five goal is to just win your last game. Now, that doesn't mean if it's in the college football playoff. It doesn't mean if it's a national championship game. It doesn't mean if it's in a bowl game. He leaves that open. He doesn't. So in Clemson's five goals, national championship is not mentioned at all. Because his whole theory is this: if you take care of those first four, then you're going to have a chance on that last one. And that could mean you get an opportunity to win it all if it comes down to it. But what he does by doing that, he really puts the emphasis on how important it is to win your conference championship. And that is an important element, because without the ACC championship, more than likely, you're not going to reach that main goal that you want to get to, right? So that's why he emphasizes that ACC championship, and why Clemson has won. They won 7 in a row at that time, or 6 in a row, excuse me. They won 6 in a row, won 7 overall since he's been the head coach. And they're setting themselves up in position to win another one this year. They still got a lot of football left, but they're in pretty good shape right now. And if they win this game against Syracuse, they will almost punch their ticket to the ACC championship game, depending on what Wake Forest does.
Let's nice segue. Thank you, Will, for that. You set up nicely to talk about the game. I'm really happy for Syracuse and Dino Babers. In fact, I heard this morning, which is no surprise, that if he hadn't had a good season this year, he was pretty much going to be another coach to be out the door. Mm-hmm. And he's had a nice season in East Carolina. We used to always play Syracuse. It's a shame we don't have that team on the schedule anymore, but that's a whole nother show, as they say. But we got used to knowing how good the Donovan McNabbs way back in the day in the 90s.
Yeah.
And how good a teams they used to have. And that's what I'm thinking about when I have Babers this year. Not that it's the same. It's a different era, of course, and different teams, but they should be good. And it's good to know that the program is like going to be going up against Clemson. And it's not like I think Clemson obviously has more talent, and most likely I would put my money on I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'm going to put my money on Clemson. But it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be a blowout where, in other words, for those of us that are college football fans, we're going to be tuned in because it's going to be an exciting game, and not we're going to see, oh, yeah, Clemson's up by 20 or 30, so we're going to flip to another game.
Yeah, the game's a sellout at Clemson, and the 81,000 or so that are going to be there on Saturday, they're not coming because it's going to be a blowout. I'm sure they're thinking it's going to be a good game. That's homecoming too, and that's got part of it. But I think the main reason it's a sellout is because I think a lot of people feel like it's going to be a good game. I think it has the potential to be a good game, and I think Syracuse can keep it close. I want to see how Syracuse look. I think there's more question marks with Syracuse than Clemson, because Clemson's played right in those games. In other words, went to Wake Forest and played in a shootout and found a way to win. Right. Went back the next week and played in this slug match with NC State the next week after coming off that high Wake Forest and found a way to win. Then going to Tallahassee last week and just punching Florida State in the nose after Florida State punched them a couple of times, just punched them in the nose and really delivered a knockout punch by the third quarter. That kind of showed, okay, we know who Clemson is right now. I think we got a pretty good idea what this football team is. But Syracuse, they played an NC State team that, let's be honest, didn't have its quarterback. I would love to see if Syracuse could beat Devin Leary in that NC State team. So I don't know much about Syracuse there. They played Purdue, and they beat Purdue. And I give them credit for that because they found a way to win. So we know a little bit of something there. But they also, that defense, which is supposed to be really good, gave up 424 passing yards to Purdue, who happens to be the best quarterback they've played to this point. But they played him at home. So they're tough. Their only road game besides this one, Dave, is at UConn.
Yep.
It's a UConn team that had only 2,000 people in the stands. There's going to be 80,000 more people in the stands Saturday when they play Clemson. So how are they going to handle that first true road game? And everybody's against you, and it's going to be a great environment. I know, a lot of people think, well, it's a noon kickoff. There could be some late stragglers. One thing I'll say about Clemson, man, and Clemson fans, and it's like when they played Wake Forest last year. If it's a noon game, they're there. They're there. They're ready to go. It isn't a dragging crowd where they're still, maybe hung over from Friday night or something like that. Clemson fans, they're different. They're one of those few fan bases around the country that they get jacked every Saturday. They're ready to go, whether it's a noon kickoff, a 3:30, or 8 o'clock kickoff. So I think the atmosphere is going to be pretty jacked, and they're going to be pretty loud and ready to go. And so how is Syracuse going to welcome that kind of crowd and handle it? They might come in there and handle it well. Dino Babers has gone in there with a team in 2018, right? And they nearly beat Clemson. They have beat Clemson in the past. Back in 2017, he beat Clemson. So the program, the coaches, they know how to do it. They can tell their players, we can beat this team because we've done it before. Last year they were within 3 points of beating Clemson. Their kicker missed 2 field goals in the fourth quarter, or they would have beaten Clemson last year. So there's the want to and the know-how. Now let's see if they actually can. Because I'll just be honest, other than Purdue, they really haven't been challenged to the sense of playing a team who's going to be as good as Clemson is with all of its weapons and all of its talent at the same time. You know what I'm saying? They haven't had to deal with that yet other than Purdue. And you can make an argument they probably should have lost that game to Purdue. But they did. They won it. And you give them credit for it, but I'm interested to see how they do on the road in that kind of environment against that kind of team.
No question about it. It's going to be I know it's going to be a great atmosphere for you guys being at home. In fact, that's on my bucket list. I've never seen a game there in Death Valley, but I'll have to come there, and maybe Bubba and I think Bubba's already been there to the stadium, but I would love to see that. It would be a lot of fun, especially.
Now, Dave, I have been to Death Valley, but it was actually not for a Clemson game. It was back in 1995 for a Carolina Panthers and San Francisco 49ers game. I have been to Death Valley several other times, when I've been in Clemson for baseball games against East Carolina, and et cetera. But
that's what I heard.
But yeah, that's definitely one of the, as a college football fan, on my bucket list, as well as a lot of other places.
We got to make it happen, guys. Y'all gotta get up here.
Sounds good. We'll definitely take you up on that offer, Will. My brother-in-law is an NC State fan, and one of his friends, who's a Clemson guy, put him up in some nice tickets for the game this year. So he came to church on Sunday. Obviously, he was sad about the result of the game, but he had nothing but. He said, man, it's easy to see why they're so good with that atmosphere.
Yeah, that game was one of the best atmospheres. They did some things this past year. They put in that new scoreboard, video board. That's amazing. They added some LED lights and things like that. They did that kind of did it. They changed some things up. So, yeah, the atmosphere has always been great at Clemson, but they did spruce it up even more. And that game that night was, one of the best atmospheres I've seen for a Clemson home football game. And I've been doing this for 18 years, so I've seen a lot of great games, a lot of game atmospheres, and that's probably my top 5. It is without a doubt my top 5.
Talk about the tailgating. That's something that was big at East Carolina. Obviously, our fan base is very passionate about football and baseball for sure, as you know. But what about the tailgating there in Clemson?
It's at a different level, my friend. It's So I was in Florida State last week, and so I was on a radio show, and it's called the Tiger Pregame Show. And so they asked me, Will, what is the atmosphere like there? And I got there about 3 o'clock. Okay, so I'm about 5 hours before kickoff. And they said, what's the atmosphere like? There's a lot of tailgating, a lot of stuff going on. And guys, I kid you not, nobody was there.
Wow.
Nobody was there. I mean, the parking lots were empty. Now, there were some people there, but not like what you would think, right? Not like what I've seen at Clemson. I mean, if Clemson's playing an 8 o'clock game at night, guys, they open up the parking lots at 8 o'clock in the morning. So people are already pulling in at 8 o'clock in the morning at Clemson to tailgate all day. They come on Thursday nights. They have the RVs. The RVs come on Thursday nights, and they're there Thursday and Friday, and they stay all day Saturday. I mean, Clemson just it's like wall to wall. Clemson's got a lot of grass areas, and that helps and stuff like that. So when you're pulling over, coming near what they call perimeter road, which takes you around the baseball stadium and the football stadium and basketball arena and all that, the athletic campus part of campus. When you pull in there, when you get right to that edge, right where the baseball stadium is, and Bubba, you would probably know since you've been to a lot of games at Doug Kingsmore, there, that area where that real grassy knoll is down there, that place is packed, shoulder to shoulder. I don't know how they get their trucks in there. I mean, and people are just slammed in there. And then you follow that all the way around and around the stadium, and I kid you not, each side of the stadium, it's just packed and just, I mean, like on a game like that NC State game he's talking about, there was 250,000 people in Clemson, and only 80,000 got in the stadium. So there's like 100,000 people or more, and I kid you not, that are sitting outside the stadium tailgating and don't get in. They just come for the tailgate and they watch the game on TV out in the parking lot.
That sounds like a NASCAR fans.
They are. It's amazing to witness it, and that's why I get to games early. I always get in the press box 3 hours early, because if you try to come 2 hours, you may get stuck in traffic, and it's a mess because there's going to be a lot of people there.
In fact, Bubba, that's what I was going to mention, is that I know Alabama does that, where Friday home games, Fridays, for as far as campus is concerned, they have no classes at Alabama. And I've been talking about our fan base. We have a lot of people that have the RVs, and we have that's another revenue stream for our Pirate Club that I've been mentioning, Will. And I didn't know you guys. I'm glad to know that. But I'm trying to tell them, if you want to be like the big boys, you got to do the things that like the big boys do. And we have a fan base that's so passionate, Will. They would stay there probably. They would park their RVs year round, or definitely football season. I mean, they're about, am I lying about that? I mean, we even tailgate hard at football season. So
yeah,
that's something that's pretty surprising. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you, Bubba.
Okay. All right. Something that's pretty surprising is that East Carolina and Clemson, despite having played, in men's basketball and baseball, no further than the two programs are apart, that they've never met on the gridiron.
It is crazy.
As much as East Carolina and South Carolina have played down through the years, which is, probably at least 15 to 20 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but, that's crazy. That's crazy.
But Dave, very quickly, since you referenced the Pirate Club, this is something I don't think we've ever really talked to Will about, and this is something something you could talk about for quite a while. But just we'll scratch the surface with it tonight. Talk about the last 10 to 15 years, since Clemson has really been rolling, and winning national championships, playing for national championships, and so forth. The success of the IPTAY Club, just how much money is being raised annually, and then and just give us a glimpse behind the scenes there.
Yeah, so let me see. So I want to make sure I'm right. That I think I'm right in saying this. Don't hold me to it, but I believe last year, or the last time it was reported, I want to say Clemson reported over $50 million with the IPTAY Club. Wow. And that's why when you look at the television numbers, the ACC, it's not up there with the SEC and stuff, right? And it's been hard for the ACC in some instances to compete against the SEC because of that television dollars they get. Well, Clemson has been able to counter it because Clemson, their IPTAY Club makes a whole lot more money, than most other schools make with their booster club organization. And I mean, Clemson people are amazing. And here's the amazing stat about that. There's no doctors or lawyers at Clemson. Their graduates are engineers, and then architects and farmers. Okay. I mean, that's the majority of Clemson's graduates, guys. And so it's not like that's a big donor base where you can go pull millions of dollars here, you would think, right? But they just do it the right way. And of course, so people know what IPTAY stands for. It was the first ever booster club organization in the country. That means high school too. Clemson was the very first one. It happened in 1934, and it was called I Pay $10 a year. Is what IPTAY stands for. And so that's obviously ballooned into, way more than I pay $10 a year. But, they've done a great job with them, just what the annual fund is what they call it, and how much they raise each year. And that allows Clemson to stay competitive. So when Clemson gets $38 million from the ACC in their television revenue sharing, and then you add on that $50 million, well, Clemson now is in a neighborhood where they're competing, and that allows them to help them compete against South Carolina, who may be getting, at least on the last contract, they were getting like $65 million, right, or somewhere in that nature. And so they were getting way, but their fund, their annual fund, isn't even close to Clemson's. I mean, it's not even near it. So Clemson's able to compete against those SEC schools because of that. And then that's allowed Clemson to say, we're going to make a commitment to football. Now, Clemson has been straight up with that. They said they've committed to football. Now, they've committed to the other sports, too. Y'all guys seen what they've done with basketball with Little John Coliseum. You've seen what they've done with Doug Kingsmore Stadium, the baseball. And, they brought their new softball field teams come in and right away has competed. So they're putting funds there, too, and competing with those. But they know, and I've talked to Graham Neff about this, the athletic director, they know if you want to compete in these other sports and be good, and get to the NCAA tournaments and things like that and put yourself in position, you have to be great in football.
Yes.
And you got to put that money first toward football and build football up, because football will take care of those other sports with funding and things like that and help them get to where they can be competitive. It all kind of works hand in hand, but it starts with football, and Clemson and Graham Neff and those guys, and it started with Dan Radakovich and Terry Don Phillips. The best story, and I'll get out with this real fast, the best story was Dabo Swinney when he was the interim head coach. He went in to do the interview with the board of directors, the board of trustees at Clemson. And they told Dabo, they said in the interview, we want to be more like the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, and Michigans. Dabo says, well, if that's what you want, I'm not your guy. And they looked at him like, what? He says, Clemson is good enough to where people will want to be Clemson than Clemson wanting to be other people. He's like, we can just be Clemson. He's like, we can do it on our own. We don't have to be those other schools. We can do it ourselves and do it our own way. And then people will want to be like us. Exactly. That's what we need to be. And that's why they hired Dabo Swinney right there. And Clemson has done it. They've done it their own way. And IPTAY has played a big role in that. And then Clemson's commitment to football. And it starts with the president, the athletic director, to the football coach. They all got to be on the same page, all three guys.
No doubt about it. In fact, our budget, Bubba, I believe, is for the whole athletic program at East Carolina is $44 million. And I've often said that, speaking of the IPTAY, that the biggest donor base that we have at our university is people that take showers after work. People, like you talk about, blue-collar people in Eastern North Carolina, for example, and beyond. They can easily give the $100 a month. I mean, $100, that would be nice. $100 a year, $120 a year. Those $100 to $500 donors is where, not to get off on a tangent, because we want to talk more about the game, but I really feel like that's a testament to you guys to show that, like we talked about the RV parking earlier, a lot of ways that we could make more money that we're not doing, but we'll save that for another show outside of the college football.
You do it with parking and season tickets. That's what Clemson does. But so Clemson's got 57,000 season tickets are sold each year.
Wow.
So that's one of the highest in the country, for a season ticket base, and so when you're putting almost that 60,000 almost in season tickets, that's just, that's where it starts. And IPTAY allows that to happen because everybody wants to get that parking pass or those 2 or 3 seats, and that's why they give that money. And like you said, you can also just give $100, IPTAY, you can be a $100 donor at IPTAY and you still get privileges a lot of other people don't get.
Bubba, you going to be a member?
Yeah, I hear you.
That way, if it comes to one football game or one baseball game, you'll have good parking.
Now, Will, I was looking at the Tigers' remaining schedule. Hey, I'm right here, 30 minutes north of Charlotte. Pirates play on the road Friday, November 11th at Cincinnati. So I noticed the Tigers are at home against Louisville that weekend.
Oh.
That's what you're saying? You want to come up to Death Valley on that day? You and
Yeah,
Dave?
we need to make it happen.
All right, we'll see what we can do, man. I can't make promises, but I'll see what I can do to help you guys out.
I got you.
You put him on the side.
No, I'll see what I can do. I can't make promises, but we see if we can try to do something for you.
Oh, that would be awesome. Bubba and I love to. In fact, Bubba and I are nerds. We love to go to different venues like we're talking about. Let's talk about the game. Let's get back to that. Bubba, I wanted to save some of the interview to break down the game. Bubba was doing other duties real quick. But let's talk about that matchup. Talk about one of the things that I'm still hearing about, and I want to get your take because you're the expert and not these national talking heads. What about the quarterback play? We've heard that ad nauseum last year, this year. I just want to get your take because I'm driving down the road and sometimes I'm like, I'm not even a Clemson fan. They're still winning the game. And I'm like going, it doesn't matter. They're still winning the game. So that's all that matters. And I just want to get your take on that.
You're talking about with DJ Uyunglele? Yeah. So DJ he's night and day then from last year. And I think what we're seeing, there's a combination of a lot of reasons why. First reason is DJ made the commitment to get better. And that's what young people who want to play this game, you got to understand that you have to make a commitment to where you sell out in everything you do. And for DJ, he got better in a lot of ways. He lost that 30 pounds. He went from 265 last year, literally 265 pounds to 235 pounds this year. He's so that's made him quicker. They use him more in the run game, and that's helped a lot of things. Last year he had the bum knee because he was overweight. He had a index finger that was broken that he played with the last 5 games of the season on his throwing hand. I don't know how he threw a football with a broken index finger, but he did. And so that kind of played a part of it too. And then his confidence. And his confidence is better for a lot of things. What I just mentioned, he got better. He went and worked on his mechanics and things of that. But also what's helped him is, guys, he's got an offensive line that's in front of him that they started. It's been the same offensive line all 7 weeks. Same guys. And they're much improved. Last year, he only played with the same offensive line 3 times. In the first 7 games of the season, he played with a different group of offensive linemen every week. So that did a lot at hurting his confidence, where he just didn't feel comfortable in the pocket, didn't trust his offensive line, if you will, as much as probably he would have liked to. But now this year, you've seen he's sitting in the pocket. He's going through his progressions. And I think Brandon Streeter did a good job with him, the Clemson's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. I think that's helped. I think it's helped that his offensive coordinator is his quarterbacks coach, because now he's talking all throughout the week to one guy. He's not talking to his quarterback coach and then the offensive coordinator. He's talking to the same guy. And I think that helps a lot in communication and getting to understand where Brandon Streeter knows where his quarterback's head's at, right? And I think that's helped a lot too. So, and then the wide receivers have played much better. They're still not where they were when they had Mike Williams and all those guys, but they're better this year. And they're making plays. And then they got this kid named Antonio Williams. If you haven't watched him play, you need to watch him play. This kid is special. He's really coming along. Each week he makes more and more plays. He's big in the special teams game. So, he's kind of helped out a lot as well. And then they got those 2 tight ends. All they are is 6'6". They're like power forwards on the basketball team, out there. They're just going up and catching everything he throws their way, because all he's got to do is just throw it and let them go get it. And they're doing it. They're going and getting the ball. And the reason they're using the tight ends more is because it goes back to the offensive line. They don't have to keep them in to chip and stuff like that. They can let them go run routes, and that's been the big difference in this offense.
And that very fact of him improving, that's what I thought. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you in front of you and say that I've watched every single minute of Clemson football or listened to the game. Mm-hmm. What I've seen with my non-football eyes, Bubba's the Bubba's a football player, is that he's making improvements. Maybe I don't know what they're expecting. Are they expecting somebody like a Trevor Lawrence? That's not the kind of quarterback he is.
No, he's more like Taj Boyd.
Yeah, exactly. He's not that. I don't know if that. I'm just like, what do you want from the guy? They're winning. They won 10 football games last year. We'll take that. We've only had at East Carolina 2 in our whole history. So we'll take that 10-win season. That's a bad year, like we talked last time with you.
Yeah.
But I was curious, like I'm not a Clemson guy, but I feel like they're being way too hard on a kid that actually, what I've seen, and Bubba, you're the quarterback, help me out, but I've seen a lot of improvement from a kid that last year he looked, I hate to use the term, maybe it's too strong to say lost, but you could definitely tell he was very young last year, and he seems to be a lot more mature this year and improving. And that's, what else can you ask for from a kid that like you said, he's losing weight. He looks like he's worked hard in the off season. That's when you win football games.
Yeah, he certainly really had a tremendous transformation. And, I guess the game I got to see him play the most this year was that shootout against Wake Forest and Winston-Salem. And he certainly lit it up that day. And also it was a tremendous threat with his legs.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm glad you brought that up, but that's where a lot of difference is now, is that he is a part of the running game, where last year he wasn't. He wasn't at all. And the defenses, didn't respect it at all. Well, this year he's kind of forced their hand. Now he's part of the run game, so that changes everything on how a defense has to attack that Clemson offense. And they run them more with the power run game, where when they ran Deshaun and Trevor, it was more finesse stuff. They would run sweeps outside. They'd run counters, quarterback draws and things like that. They're running the power a lot with DJ because he's not a guy that's going to get out on the edge like, Deshaun Watson would and make people miss. He's not that kind of runner, but he can run downhill. He can run downhill like almost like a fullback, if you will. And he's 6'5", 235 pounds. He's bigger than most linebackers he has to go against. So you run that guy downhill like they used to do Taj Boyd, and it totally sets up 3rd and 1 now. If you're a defense, you're like, okay, what are they going to do on 3rd and 1? Because they can run the quarterback power. They can run Shipley. They can throw out of it. It just really freezes the defense up. 9 times out of 10, they're going to run the quarterback power. But that 1 or 2 times they don't, it goes for 20 or 30 yards, and their defense is sitting there like, darn, we should have just played it safe. So it really has opened a lot of things up with his legs, and that's why I think you see Clemson, improving in offense, especially in the red zone, where they're 100% right now in the red zone. So they're like 35 for 35 or some crazy number in the red zone. It's nuts.
Now, Will, the final thing I'd have for you is this. As you've done your homework on this matchup, obviously Syracuse, very few people expected them to be 6-0. Looking at their schedule, not an extremely challenging schedule, especially when, yes, they still beat a quality football team, no doubt, with NC State.
Mm-hmm.
But the first game for the Wolfpack, since that injury to Leary, and then they did beat a fairly solid football team in Purdue there in the Dome. But this is, far and away the most challenging game to date. So, in order for Syracuse to have a shot in this one, what do you think is going to have to happen for the Orange? Or do you think they can compete in this one?
Yeah. Can they win? Of course they can, because Clemson isn't invincible. This isn't 2018 Clemson where they're going to score 63 on you. They're not that kind of offense. They're efficient. They're efficient offense. And they do the right things. However, if you have a bad day, you could lose a game. I'm not going to lie to you. If Clemson turns the ball over, which they haven't been doing, if they have stupid penalties at times when they shouldn't, which they have been doing at times. They did that last week to Florida State a few times. If the defense doesn't come to play like it didn't last week in that first and fourth quarter, they kind of bookend a pretty good performance in the middle, the second and third quarter, where they shut Florida State down, but they bookend it by just playing not good at all in the first and not good at all in the fourth. If they play like that, then yes, Syracuse. If Syracuse comes in and plays its best game and Clemson doesn't play its best game, Syracuse can beat Clemson. I mean, they really can. But if Clemson plays its best game, then Clemson's going to win this game, because they're the better team. And then when you're playing your best and you got the best players, you're going to win. The reason teams get upset, is not like something happened to those players or whatever. They just didn't play well. And when you're Clemson, Syracuse is going to come in and give its best because that's their Super Bowl. This is their Super Bowl. They're playing in front of 80,000 people. They won't play in front of a larger crowd all year, right? And Clemson is Clemson, and they got that target on their back, and they want to beat Clemson because they know what it means to beat Clemson for their program. So they're going to come in and give it their all. Syracuse is going to come and ball. They are. So Clemson's got to have the mindset they better come and ball. And, Levon Kirkland, who's my co-host and former Clemson standout and Pittsburgh Steelers standout, on the Believe podcast for Clemson football, he says, you got two ways to look at it when you're a player. He says, if one guy's coming in to fight and the other guy's coming in to play a football game, then the guy who's coming in to fight is going to win the game. He says, you got to come in for a fight too. Because if you're just coming in to play a football game and those guys are coming to fight, then you're going to be in for a long day. And I don't think you could say it any better way than that. Clemson's got to come ready to fight. Florida State last week came to fight, and they punched Clemson in the mouth there in that first quarter, but Clemson responded. They came to fight too and play a football game. Clemson's got to have that same mentality to beat Syracuse, and so we'll see what's going to happen on Saturday.
And before we let you go, we appreciate your time as always. We love talking football. Can we ask you one basketball question? What do you think about, obviously, basketball starting very soon? Mm-hmm. How are things looking there for in Clemson with Coach Burnell?
Yeah, they're I think they're going to be a pretty good team. They bring in back PJ Hall. They're bringing back Chase Hunter. Those are their two best players. They also are bringing back a couple other guys that I think are real good, that are going to give them a chance. They had a couple of freshmen last year. They're sophomores now. I think you're going to see those guys continue to progress and help out because they had to play last year because PJ and Hunter Tyson's the other one. He's probably their number 3 best player. Hunter Tyson those two guys got hurt at the midpoint of the season last year. So those freshmen had to step in and play, and that's probably going to benefit Brownell because now you bring that experience back with them. And so PJ, who's injured, but they think he might be back here. If he won't be back right at the start of the season, maybe soon after the season starts. He's been having to deal with a foot issue that's nagged him since last year. I think they have a chance. I know the ACC media picked him 11th, but let's be honest. Can we be honest with ACC media? It's the Tar Heel, Tobacco Road people. It's always going to be North Carolina, Duke, and NC State that they're going to pick higher. It is what it is. They won't admit that, but we all know that live outside of the triangle that's the case. There's a lot of favoritism over there to those 3 teams. And Wake Forest doesn't get that same favoritism usually. So let's just call it like it is. So the ACC media always shuns Clemson, and they always pick them 10th or 11th. And I'm like, this team is better than 10th or 11th. The guys they're bringing back, PJ Hall is potential All-American candidate, definitely first-team All-ACC candidate. And you're going to pick this team to be 10th or 11th? Come on. Not giving Brownell and his crew enough credit for what they do and how good they can be. So I think Clemson's probably somewhere between 5 and 8, I think, this year. And if they can do that, I think they can make the NCAA tournament.
And Bubba, I know you have one more before we let Will go.
Yeah, just kind of question. Outside, when I was outside of Sean Tucker, what's your biggest concern going into this matchup?
Wow. Well, first of all, Sean Tucker, the way they use him, he's not being used in the run game as much because they've had some, issues on the offensive line. So they're not as dominant of a run team as they have been in years past. They're only averaging in games where they don't play Wagner, because they ran for 388 on Wagner. In games they don't play Wagner, they're only averaging 148 yards a game rushing, and they're averaging like 3.8 yards per carry. So they're not a dominant run team. But what they've done is, Schrader is much improved. I mean, guys, he went from barely completing over 50% of his passes last year to where he's near 70% now. I mean, that's a huge leap. And part of that is because of the offensive coordinator they got. The guy from Virginia who was with Brennan Armstrong last year and all that. Well, he came to Syracuse when they had the coaching change at Virginia. He came to Syracuse, and that's one reason why you're seeing Schrader play so well. He's done a tremendous job with him, and because of that, he's more, he's got more of a, he wants to run the ball like every coach does, but he's more developed in the passing game as a coordinator. And you're seeing he knows how to use a guy like Sean Tucker. When defenses are stacking the boxes and saying, okay, you're not going to run, Sean Tucker ain't beating us with the run, they're going different directions with them, and they're using them in the screen game. A lot like how Clemson used Travis Etienne a few years ago, if you think about that. And so he's a big part of their passing game, and they like to get him on the edges and get him in space where he can do some damage. And then they use Garrett in the run game, and he's such a big guy. He's like another guy, 6'4", 230. You get him, and he's like, unlike DJ, he can run in the open field, and he's fast, but he's also big. He's a lot like Josh Allen. He's very athletic. And I'm not saying he's Josh Allen. I'm not saying that, guys. I'm just saying as far as his athletic ability goes, he's a lot like a Josh Allen there. And so that makes him dangerous in the run game. So that's a good combination for him. And then on the defensive side, with the exception of the Purdue game, they've been pretty good in the back end. And that's allowing them. They play that stacked defense a lot like NC State, so they got that 3-3-5. And what they want to do is they're going to make you drive the ball, but then when you get in the red zone, they make it extremely difficult for you. But they also bring a lot of pressure, a lot of exotic looks, and try to confuse the quarterback. So it's going to be interesting for DJ because they do more exotic stuff than NC State does with this stacked defense. And so it's going to be interesting how DJ handles it and the different pressures they're going to bring. They blitz about 50% of the time. They're going to bring pressure from somewhere. What does he get the right read? And is he not throwing it to a place where that rover may be sitting and you throw a pick or something like that? So it's going to be interesting what they do and see how they try to confuse DJ on that side of the ball.
Will, thank you so much for the time. We obviously want to plug your podcast and obviously Clemson SI. I know that's where people can read your work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can read me at Clemson SI and all the stuff my colleagues got up there too. We cover all the ins and outs of the Clemson football, men's basketball, and baseball. So we like to cover all the sports if you will. We cover softball too, and they're good. And they've been good the whole time they started. So we do that, and then you can read me at Steeler Will on Twitter, and then of course always listen to me and Devon talk Clemson football on the Believe in Clemson Football podcast.
We'll see how things go for you. Good luck to you guys the rest of the way. In fact, I think when it's all said and done, you'll be in the CFP. We'll see. And another ACC championship. But we'll definitely have you back on during that time. Appreciate you always coming on and love talking sports and college football with you. Yeah,
same here, guys. I always enjoy coming on here and talking ball with y'all. And Bubba, I will look into it, my friend. We'll try to see if we can make it happen. I'm being honest when I say that. So we'll go see what we're going to do, okay?
All right, sounds good, man.
All right, guys.
Take care. Have a good weekend.
All right, have a good night.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
I appreciate Will very much. Bubba coming on, and man, that would be awesome. Wouldn't you like to go down there to Death Valley? That would be pretty amazing.
Tremendous venue, one of the top in college football, no doubt, and would love to see it in person one day.
And by the way, if you did not know, guys and ladies watching and listening, Bubba does an excellent job with our YouTube channel, and whenever we're at I was up with the Washington Commanders for preseason, and he made a nice video for that. He and I are like stadium nerds. Whenever we go I went to the Charlotte Football Club. If it's soccer, I know a lot of people may be watching this don't like that type of football, but whenever we go to a stadium, and Bubba's the best at it, making videos and showing you what a stadium looks like for sure. We'll see if we can work that out. Bubba, I know with Inside Slant, our week 8 for our college football preview, hard to believe. I know that you've got another great interview, right?
Caught up with Charles Arbuckle. And Charles played tight end for the UCLA Bruins as an ESPN analyst. Also does a variety of other analyst work, both on Sirius XM and also is part of I think it's damn good sports podcast. I'm trying to recall the name. I think it's the ADSN network. And I think another damn sports network. There we go. But yeah, Charles and I caught up for about 15 minutes earlier this evening and recorded that interview, primarily focusing on his Bruins going to Autzen Stadium to take on the Oregon Ducks in a top 10 matchup. And Chip Kelly and the Bruins really have it rolling. And the Ducks have had 5 straight wins since getting blown out in the season opener against Georgia. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare against their former coach on Saturday. But let's go ahead and go to the interview now with Charles Arbuckle. And right now on the Inside Slant, very excited to be rejoined by ESPN analyst, former UCLA tight end, Charles Arbuckle. Charles, we appreciate your time this evening.
Hey, thanks a lot.
No doubt. Appreciate your time and coming back on the show. And, with the season the Bruins are having, we've tried to get you on for a few weeks now. We're glad we're finally able to work it out. And, what a season for Chip Kelly's ball club. And, they're now headed up to Autzen Stadium this weekend for a top 10 matchup with Oregon.
Yeah, never an easy place to play. I've watched some things lately that talk about Autzen shows up. I think one area that needs to is there's another Washington. UW is a tough place to play as well from a noise perspective and when they're playing well. But I think the big thing with UCLA is they've done a couple things pretty well this year. Offensively, Dorian, Thompson, Robinson has been in that system for a long time, and he's doing a really nice job. Zach Charbonnet has really run the ball effectively. And I think the big thing, too, is some of the weapons that have come in, like Jake Bobo, have really made a big difference on the offensive side. But I think defensively, this UCLA team is playing a lot better than they had in the past, especially getting pressure on quarterbacks, stopping the run, doing some things where they're not leaving guys out to dry. And I think that's one of the things that I have to commend and say, much kudos to my former teammate, Ken Norton, who's on that defensive staff. So I think what they finally found is some transfers that have come in and guys that have been able to step in and make plays right away. And I think that's been the biggest thing. And DTR has protected the football. When you play at Autzen Stadium or on the road, that's where UCLA has struggled, but they're +6 this year. They're taking the ball away, and they're doing a much better job of protecting the football.
Yeah, the administration's patience has certainly paid off. This is year 5 for Chip Kelly. His first 2 years, 3-9, 4-8. Then you had 2020 where the Bruins went 3-4, but last year 8-4, 6-3 in the Pac-12. And then obviously 6-0, 3-0 this year. And just talk about that, just the big picture and the way the patience has paid off for that UCLA program.
Yeah, I think the big thing is if you think of those Oregon teams, a lot of people think they throw the ball all over the yard, right? But I think what Chip was doing the first few years is really trying to design an offense that could run the football and have the threat of the quarterback run and then be able to throw it when you needed to. And I think that's the one thing when you look at this team now, they're averaging 200-plus yards rushing or somewhere in that number. And it's been consistent. Every game they've played, they want to establish the run. I think the key tomorrow or Saturday when this game takes place is to look and see the rush attempts. If they can continue to do that effectively and not have to throw when they don't want to, I think that's what puts them in a good spot. And they've had a lot of explosive plays. And, the biggest thing I don't think people realize, and it took me a while to kind of think about this for DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson, he only played quarterback his senior year in high school. He was actually playing receiver. He played other positions, on that talented team out of Vegas that he was on. So I think those things you have to consider. He's now in a point where he's played so many plays at the quarterback position that he understands it. He really knows how to play that position well. And I think that's what you look at for this ball club. Chip's got a guy that has a lot of experience, and he knows the offense inside and out. And I can remember early on when he was just there as a freshman, his first time ever taking a quarterback sneak play was taking the ball from under center was a quarterback sneak, and he had never done that in high school. So, when you think about those things, you can see why he's playing at such a high level. It's going to be a tough out at Autzen. I don't think they've won there since 2004. And the Oregon fans, I don't think they still have a lot of love for Chip. And it'll be interesting to see how the Bruins hold up.
No doubt some interesting dynamics to this matchup, as you just referenced. But before we talk specifically about the Bruins and Ducks and what a game that should be, talk more about DTR. And you've provided a little background there for our viewers, but this is a guy that's completing right at 75% of his passes. 15 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, having thrown for a little over 1,500 yards, and then obviously he is really a threat to hurt you with his legs as well. And he's being mentioned right there along with Hendon Hooker from Tennessee as far as a candidate for the Heisman.
Yeah, I think he's grown up and he looks like what I see now, what I've seen from week 1, is that the game has slowed down for him. A lot of people talk about that, and what does that mean? It means that you don't rush it. And he used to really rush himself early in games. He was sometimes over athletic, and now you see him really allowing the game to come to him. And I think that's one reason why he's protected the football better. He knows when to run it. That Washington game was a prime example. When he chose to run the hurdle, I always get a little worried, but he's done that in the past. But that one down in the goal line where he goes in, has 2 defenders, and he makes them collide, that's when he's seeing a 360-degree view of the field. And I think that's what you're starting to see with him, just really getting much more comfortable. I think, in talking to a few people last week, in particular, a guy that I went to school with who's now an agent and kind of knows he was in the scouting world before as well. He said, this is going to make people rethink what they wrote before the season about DTR. And I think that is impressive because he's been able to really show that he possibly can play at the next level. And he's really done a nice job with his arm. If you watch him now, there's some things that he wasn't doing as an anticipation thrower that he does a lot better on slants and certain things. And I think part of that is because the game has slowed down. And I watch him now, not just reading 1, 2, and then run, but I've seen him go 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe take off, but he's still looking to throw the ball down the field. Those are the things you look for. I mean, you can see it in Hendon Hooker as well. They're using things to make Hendon Hooker comfortable, but he seems to be much more comfortable and not worried with the pressure that's coming after him. And I think you're seeing that with DTR as well.
Moving on to take a look specifically at this matchup with the Oregon Ducks. Oregon obviously was blown out in the season opener against Georgia down in Atlanta, but since then they've kind of, they've certainly figured things out. And as you take a look at this Ducks team, what really stands out to you, and what are things that are going to definitely pose significant threats for the Bruins?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. Bo Nix is finally playing like everybody anticipated him to play when he was coming out of school. I was just listening to something today that said, for the first time he had one of his coaches tell him, hey, don't worry. Dan Lanning, after the Georgia game, said, hey, we're in this together. And it seems to have set him at ease because he's throwing the ball very effectively. He's running it well when he needs to. And they're doing a nice job in the run game and the two-headed monster combination that they have. There's a lot of talk about Zach Charbonnet, but their running back crew is really, really solid as well. And they're making plays in the passing game, which was a problem for Bo Nix years that we saw him at Auburn. And I think that's the thing with this defense. Their front seven is nasty. I think where you get Oregon is their back end. They're not very good on the back end. They've given up a lot of yards there. And I'm sure UCLA will do some things with window dressing and try to get the run game going because they're going to, like I said, think about this whenever you watch games, is the rush attempts. It's not the yards you get, but the attempts. And if you can have a high attempt number with numbers that'll come with 5 yards a carry, if you'd like, that's when you're running the ball very effectively. So I think we'll see that from this Oregon team. The thing that UCLA will probably have to do is exploit them on the back end because they're just not very good on the back end of their secondary unless they play better. These are the type of games where you can make a name for yourself. And I think that secondary is going to have to play very, very well because this UCLA team can throw the ball and they have a lot of explosive players outside. I think the one guy that you always have to look for at Oregon is their middle linebacker, Noah Sewell, who, is Penei Sewell's younger brother. He is a fabulous player for them defensively. And they're getting a lot out of their defense, like I said, on the front seven. They will pressure UCLA, and that's where UCLA is going to have to protect Dorian, Thompson, Robinson, but also make sure that they take advantage of the speed and the strength that Oregon likes to bring from that front seven.
Moving on to take a look at some of the other stories nationally. Obviously, you had Alabama get knocked off at Tennessee. The Vols taking down the Crimson Tide for the first time since 2006. And, what a story Josh Heupel's ball club is. And then you had Georgia. They've shown a little vulnerability. They had a close call at Mizzou. So, what are some of the stories and headlines that you've really been keeping an eye on nationally?
Yeah, that Alabama loss was a big one. I also think I'm looking, as we close up here, this TCU team, keep an eye on that Kansas State TCU game. I think that's going to be a real interesting game because, Adrian Martinez, you talk about a guy that's had a rebirth. He's really done well in this offense at K-State. And, Sonny Dykes has done an outstanding job with this TCU ball club, Quentin Johnson being one of them, but Max Dugan, another guy that wasn't even supposed to start. I called one of their games earlier this year, and they are impressive on offense. So look for that game. I also think this will be interesting, Texas and Oklahoma State. I'm curious to watch that one and kind of see how that unfolds. And then lastly, for me, I think, this Ole Miss team, there's a lot of talk about Ole Miss this year. It's going to be interesting to see how they play this weekend. I think Lane has done a really nice job of getting some things going. But, are they up for the challenge this weekend? And lastly, Mississippi State at Bama. I think it's tough to play them when they lose. But if you want to see anybody play him and may have a chance to get under his skin, it would be Mike Leach. There's some games this weekend that have a lot of good stuff. I think that Ole Miss team, just going back to that one, this LSU ball club is tricky because I don't know which team I'm going to get, the one that's going to fumble punts and kickoffs, or are they going to be the team that can have some explosive plays? It looks like Jaden Daniels is finally getting comfortable, and he and Keyshawn Boutte, who I think Keyshawn Boutte has struggled offensively because of the new system. It looks like Jaden Daniels is also getting more comfortable in making decisions and not trying to just run first like he was doing earlier in the year.
Yeah, certainly a tremendous amount of parity. You mentioned that Ole Miss LSU game. The Rebels ranked 7th now. They did have a bit of a struggle with Auburn at home last weekend, and LSU unranked, and yet the Tigers are a 2-point favorite at home. So that just is a reflection of the parity. You've seen that happen a lot this year, where you've had a team that's in the top 10 or in the top 15 as a underdog to an unranked team or a team that's barely in the polls. The only other game I would mention is the Clemson hosting Syracuse at Death Valley. Dino Babers' team has certainly been an unbelievable story this year. No one would have guessed they would be ranked 14th. You think they have a shot against Clemson?
I do. I think here's the thing. Their defense is really good. Tony White has done a nice job, former Bruin as well, but he's got that Rocky Long 3-3-5 defense really rolling well. And I think their defense has to be the key to them winning. Clemson does everything they need to do to win ball games. And if you're going to beat them, you've got to find ways, especially at Death Valley, because they just don't know how to lose at home. But you got to teach them how to do that. And I think with Syracuse, the thing is keeping the game close early, and it's not really going to be their offense. I think I think they have to rely on that defense, whether it's Michael Jones, Okechukwu, Marlo Wax, but their secondary. Their secondary can hold up because it looks like DJ is playing a lot better. Will Shipley, who's done a really nice job for Clemson as well. They're going to have to stop that Clemson offense. But I think this defense for Syracuse is going to surprise people if you haven't watched them. I saw them against Wagner, so it was really no competition. But watching film and then understanding what they've done there. They've done a really nice job. And Robert and I and that offensive staff has done a really nice job of making those guys play much better on offense, which was struggling, which was surprising for Dino Babers' team. So I think if they can withstand some of the things early, get a fast start, maybe you get a turnover in special teams or you force DJ into some bad decisions, that's how you win games on the road. The thing with Clemson now, they don't have those explosive playmakers on the outside like they used to. And I think that's where Syracuse seems with Dino and Dabo. I saw the last game in a game a few years ago when Dino was able to knock him off in that loud the dome. They call it the loud dome or whatever it is. But it was funny. The fans were leaving in the first half, and then when Syracuse came storming back, they had to rush back in the stadium. So I think, when you watch this game, just look for the defense for Syracuse more so than, Sean Tucker on offense for them and Garrett Schrader, who's playing really well in that offense.
Well, Buck, we appreciate the time. Before we let you go, tell folks how they can follow your work on social media, and then also I know people can listen Sirius XM, obviously ESPN, and then also another damn sports network.
Yeah, at Charles Arbuckle on Twitter. I think at Charles_Arbuckle on IG. Just every weekend trying to do something and make some things happen, man. So I appreciate you having me on.
Appreciate Charles Arbuckle's time. We've had him on the show a time or two before, talking UCLA football, Pac-12, and just college football at large. And it was good to chat with him again. And who knows, we may have him back before the season's over.
No doubt about it. Appreciate him very much. And the Inside Slant, the Week 8 college football preview. And I know, Bubba, we're going to talk a few games and get out of here, right?
Yeah, one of the games that really intrigues me is the one that he brought up, the matchup between K-State and TCU. Yeah. Obviously, much has been made, as it should have been, over the TCU Horned Frogs and the job that Sonny Dykes is doing there. But you take a look at K-State, their only loss came to number 25 Tulane, and the Green Wave are now 6-1, coming off that win over USF, and it'll be interesting to see how they do hosting the Memphis Tigers. Memphis is obviously really in need of a win after losing back-to-back heartbreakers to Houston and East Carolina. But focusing in on that TCU and K-State matchup a bit, something that I believe Buck brought up. If not, maybe Rini and Goey and I were talking about it. And for our viewers and listeners, it was going to be part of this show, but since this show is already a little over an hour long, I had a little over a 30-minute chat with Rini and Goya, who is coming to us from G Vegas, as he flew in a little bit earlier than usual because of the flight he was able to get, but had an excellent conversation with him about ECU, UCF, and then also a lot of other college football topics in the American and nationally. But I think K-State, one of the big things that has stood out to me is coming over from Nebraska quarterback and the season that he has had there for the Wildcats.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the Big 12 is that everybody, in the past when you had Lincoln Riley there and Bob Stoops were there, it's like Oklahoma. And one of the things I liked about with this year being a college football fan is it's made it exciting because you don't know who's going to win that league. And it's going to be interesting to see. TCU with Sonny Dykes has done a great job. And I know his daddy coached there. Now he moves over there to from literally, when I say Crosstown, I mean, it's in the Metroplex here at Dallas. So he goes from SMU and goes to TCU and made a nice transition there. And I know they're happy with him, Bubba. And the game we've been talking about, obviously, with Syracuse and Clemson, that's a game that I've had a curiosity for because Clemson is always Clemson, and Syracuse has been one of my top favorite stories as far as programs that have we've talked this year about Kansas. We talked about UCLA. Duke is better than we thought. Didn't think they would be anywhere near what they are and you look at Syracuse. So there's a lot of great programs that are, and then we were talking about the teams in the Big 12 that we didn't see that coming and on the radar.
Certainly, and a game that he has not mentioned that I talked about a little, Charles Arbuckle. You look at the pay in college football. This week, Ole Miss was really challenged at home by Auburn, and we know what Auburn has been this year, and that they certainly had their share of struggles. But that Ole Miss offense, and I'm in the process. I'm trying to see what that over/under is for the Ole Miss LSU game. Obviously, LSU had their own high-scoring affair in the Swamp with the Florida Gators, but I'm thinking that I would probably be taking the over in that one because it's crazy, and you've seen this a lot this year, Dave. You have number 7 Ole Miss, but LSU, as we know, has been up and down, and we know what happened when they were playing Tennessee at home, and I'm sure that the bettors are probably thinking, no way they're going to play poorly 2 games in a row at Tiger Stadium. But they're not ranked, and they're a 2-point favorite over number 7 Ole Miss. So that just shows you how crazy college football has been this year, where you see these top 10, top 15 teams that are underdogs in games against teams that aren't even ranked.
Very exciting, and there's so much parity that I would love. I wish I could see it where, Bubba, there's been this big talk, and then you and I haven't had a chance to talk a lot this week about 3 SEC teams in the playoff, and I'm like, how can it's great to talk about. We're obviously, I guess, at a smaller scale talking heads, but we haven't even gotten to anywhere close to that. Who knows what's going to happen? If there's ever been a year that you better not do the conventional bets and conventional wisdom, it's this year with the parity in college football.
Yep, and Jay Cutler, James, that is, brings up an interesting nugget on YouTube, and he's talking about Garrett Riley, the brother of Lincoln Riley, being the offensive coordinator for Sonny Dykes and the TCU Horned Frogs. And that's something I thought about, a few weeks back when they really lit up Oklahoma, obviously Lincoln's former school. So that was a really interesting storyline, and it certainly still is for Pirate Nation as they follow the Rileys and everything they're doing. Obviously, Lincoln and USC lost that heartbreaker 43-42 in Salt Lake City a week ago. So it'll be interesting to see if they can run the table and maybe get back into the playoff hunt.
Yeah, I the way they started out, Bubba, I thought that USC had it, but that's why it's not how you start. As they say, it's how you finish. And we're going to finish strong tonight. Sure, you got some more games you want to talk about, my friend?
There were just a couple more I was going to make a quick mention of. I didn't really have a whole lot on either, but Mississippi State, they had finally, they had gotten into the polls. They went on the road to Kentucky, who was in desperate need of a win, coming off the loss to South Carolina, and Will Levis was back, and they really did a good job defensively of, shutting down, or at least slowing down significantly, that Mississippi State offense and Will Rogers. So now, Mississippi State's looking to bounce back against a Bama team that's looking to bounce back, and that game is in Tuscaloosa. So I don't think that one will go very well for the Bulldogs against the Crimson Tide, but we'll see. They're certainly capable of making it a competitive game, but it will be interesting to see how that one goes. And then within the league, you have number 21 Cincinnati going to Dallas to take on the SMU Mustangs. And if SMU's going to be a threat whatsoever in the league, and I say that they don't necessarily have to win this one, but if they do, rather, this would really solidify them as a threat in the league, because they're 3-3, but they're 1-1 in AAC play. So if they are able to take down Cincinnati, then look out. Rhett Lashley and the Mustangs are a contender and a strong one at that. But I think Luke Fickell and the Bearcats. It was a bit surprising, even with it being on the road, that they're just a 3-point favorite. But I think they'll win this one by 10 to 14 points at least.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So we're thinking along those lines. I'll tell you another game that I'm looking at, and not on a national scale, but Bubba, because they're an opponent, and maybe one day down the road, another the team they're playing will be our opponent. How about the Byu Liberty game? I'm looking at that one. I think that was 30. That's a game that nobody is kind of under the radar, but I think that has a chance to be a good game.
That's a good point there. Mention, and like you're saying, with that game being in Lynchburg, Liberty had, I guess, traveled out in the last year or two to Provo, but that will be an interesting matchup, and even more so with the Pirates going out there for that Friday night matchup next week. So we shall see. But BYU's really in need of a victory because they're coming off a couple of losses to Notre Dame, and then also at home by 17 points to 35 to the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah, and Arkansas is a very good football team. But I think the way that we thought preseason that BYU would be a real, I'm not saying it's going to be an easy game in Provo. Don't misunderstand me. But can we win that game in Provo, being East Carolina? Absolutely. And don't ever think that if you think you can't win a game, then there's no point of playing the game. So,
yeah,
no doubt about it.
The Pirates' next 4 games are against Big 12 opponents: UCF, and BYU, Cincinnati, and then Houston comes to Dowdy-Ficklen. So here's hoping that we play our best football and are very respectable and take care of business in these games and really send a statement around the nation with some quality performances against these future Big 12 programs.
My gut feeling, I'm going to go with 2-2, but I hope we're at least 3-1. But I think 2-2 is what we're going to go during this, and that would make us bowl eligible. And then I think the Temple game will be. I said 8-4. I hope I'm right, but I would lean towards. I think you guys are saying more 6-6. I'm gonna go 7-5. I'll take 2 out of the 4. We'll go 500 against the Big 12 opponents or future Big 12 opponents, and then win the Temple game. That's my late season prediction, if you will. So we'll see how it turns out. I hope it'll turn out in our favor.
Yeah, let's hope we do what we can do, and we certainly seen the potential from this team, and hoping we'll get some of those guys that have been on the injury list a bit over the last few weeks, get them back and be able to put our best foot forward year and go to back-to-back bowls for the first time in nearly a decade.
Oh, man, that would be fantastic. In fact, it was such a heartbreaker. And, Bubba, we're going to be there. There's a lot of our friends in Pirate Nation that are going to be there, I know, and a lot of former players that we've heard from all over Pirate Nation. They're going to be there. So that'll be a lot of fun. In fact, if you're looking right now, make sure you ask off for some dates in December. We'll at least wait till we're bowl eligible. How about that? Let's not jinx and get too ahead of ourselves. But we're getting there. We're getting there. 2 more wins, and we'll be there at least for bowl eligibility. So that'll be great. Bubba, before we go, I know that we're going to promo our shows, and this, of course, is the Inside Slant, a weekly college football preview. If you're just joining us for the first time, we do it every Thursday night, and it's live. And then, of course, you can watch it anytime archive. Appreciate everybody so much for their support of the program. And we'll tell you about our programs. In fact, Monday nights, you can actually watch Absolute Empowerment, former strength and conditioning coach at East Carolina University. And, of course, that is Jeff Connors. And man, he's had a plethora, amazing guests. He is the all-knowing. He gets deep into the Rolodex. Hey, can you come on the show? Great. And we record it, and of course, we'll put it out on Monday nights. Tuesday is our Pirate preview as we take a look at the game. Gives you a few days to kind of listen to the show and get ready for the big game. Wednesday, we have Sonny and Semenza. That's, of course, 2 letter winners of Matt Semenza. And, of course, when we talk about Sonny, Jay Sunhalter, and they do a great job. The Pirate Breakdown, awesome job. Of course, we have Sutton Young. Appreciate him very much. This show on Thursday and Friday. Bubba does a great job of Pirates Life for me, and he has a Pirates there. Saturdays, of course, we do it when there's a home game of the Stadium Sounds, and that's awesome. And, of course, Sunday, don't forget about the Pirate Playback, brought to you by our good friend. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Kevin Walker. You're 35 today. I'm just kidding. But L&K Custom Homes, Kev is awesome. We appreciate his support of the program. Give him a call if you're looking to improve your house or maybe build your home. Man, these award-winning custom-made homes at 336-688-8461. He's based out of Greensboro, the Tri-area, but I'm sure if you got the money, he's got the time. And again, call him at 336-688-8461. Also, our good friends at Porky's Backyard Barbecue, 805 East Boulevard in Williamston. In fact, it's the holiday season coming up. Call the Holiday Brothers, and that's Terry and Mark Holiday, my dear friends, 252-661-0337. And by the way, we'll let you know next Saturday night from 5 to 7, if you're in the Williamston area, we're going to do a trunk or treat. So come by, and myself and the kids and a lot of other kids and families are going to come out to Porky's Backyard Barbecue next Saturday. Again, bring the kids 5 until 7, and we'll have some adult things like a costume contest for the adults after 7 o'clock, more in the 8 o'clock hour, 8 to 11, something like that, and music karaoke, a lot of fun there. Finally, last but not least, of course, pgxgloves.com. And, you know, Mark Minikazi, he's been with us for the last few years. And Kaz has got some great gloves. You go there for batting gloves, football gloves, golf gloves. He's got great swag, T-shirts, so much more. And get this. And in the promo code, if you put ECU, you get 25% all the products. Again, simply go to pgxgloves.com. Don't take my word for it. Go there and find out how you want to talk about the next level, how you can really rise your game. Just go there and look at the quality merchandise they have for maybe it's a loved one. The holidays around the corner, and get those gloves at pgxgloves.com. All right, for Will, Charles, Bubba, we're going to get out of here. It's the Inside Slant, a weekly college football preview, and it's right here on the Sports Objective on Thursday nights. Good night, everybody, and as always, go Pirates.